I have a great pleasure in welcoming you all on my own behalf and also on behalf of Mehta and Mehta. And today's topic, as we have started discussing with the various committees, so far we have discussed about two of the committees. One is the Risk Management Committee, others is the Nomination Remuneration Committee. Today we are actually going to see the insight into the Corporate Social Responsibility Committee. As you are aware, this subject is a very wide subject. And CSR is actually nothing but the other side of the coins of the corporate governance. If I look at the coin, one side we can call it corporate governance, other side is the CSR. And nowadays we actually see there are so many organizations which are actually contributing towards social welfare, various activities, etc. Reports are getting published. Our government also taking a lot of initiatives on this. And here this subject is very, very important. We have a panelist today, which is Deepak Mandrekar. In fact, we have been associated long back in Pune. He was Punekar, and he was with the Kirloskar Oils and the Punewala Group, etc., and other things, and all those things. I know him well, actually.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, he has got a vast experience of over 2.5 decades of the experience. And currently, he is working with the Renega Sugar Mills. He is very much involved in the CSR activities, oversee the program, and he is bringing out the various report on CSR, BRSR, etc., and all this thing. He is the opt panelist for our program today to share his personal experiences and the CSR related thing. We can hear more from him. And he himself being a company secretary, we will also get to know what is the company secretary role in relation to the CSR and what the company secretary can actually contribute towards enhancing and ensuring the absolute compliances here, CSR. And many of you are aware, actually, the ROC nowadays is actually having a facility of online checking by filing the various companies report, etc. They are actually going through it. And they are actually very concerned about the stricter compliances of the companies. I keep on seeing many CSR issues which are actually coming up, even starting from trivial issue to the major issues. For example, if the company has have an unspent CSR amount which is identified, as per the law, it is required to be opened a separate bank account. It is to be put in that particular account. It has to be spent in the ongoing project. But I have seen companies who are actually virtually opened the account, they have transferred to the unspent account. But what happens is instead of identifying the ongoing project, spending the ongoing project, they started sending in the regular accounting. It has been actually treated as, misuse of the fund. And the regulators have come heavily for the companies and they have been penalized, actually. So this is what it is actually happening. So from that perspective, the company's CSR subject is very, very important. Coming to our panelist, he has got a very, very vast experience having worked with the companies like Gabriel India, Kirloskar Oil Engines, Punewala Group of companies, Saint Coben. All those things he is much involved and he is actually worked with the listed and unlisted companies. He is very much conversant with the compliances, with the listing regulation, PIT regulation, and also handling merger and capital reduction and various key corporate aspects of the things. As I said, in the current role, he has been actually much involved in the CSR and his contribution on this field is very immense. And he is also bringing out the various reports of the CSR and the BRSR report as well. And he is also actively involved in a Pura chapter in study circle meeting, MSOB programs, and other thing. His contribution to the professional and upcoming professionals was very, very noteworthy, actually. I would say that. With this, I would hand over the mic to Deepak. I'll ask him to share his thoughts on this particular subject. And then I'll ask Mr. Sudhakar to say a few words before we start the presentation. Over to Deepak, please.
Thank you, Bala sir, for a wonderful introduction. And good morning, Sudhakar sir, and to the Mehta and Mehta team. It's an absolute privilege to be part of this knowledge sharing series of Mehta and Mehta and share the forum with stalwarts like Sudhakar sir and Bala sir. So I'd like to especially thank Deepti madam for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this topic today. Even before CSR gained a legal recognition in the 2013 Act, there have been many companies who have realized that running the company's operations has a profound impact on the resources of the society and also on the environment, and therefore it is imperative that they share their gains with the society in some way or the other. These companies, like everyone must be knowing, like the big groups like Tata Group, Reliance, they have done path-breaking work in the field of CSR, whether it is in the field of employee welfare, healthcare, education, water conservation, equal opportunities, environment protection, and so many other areas. CSR, while in its present form, was introduced by the Companies Act 2013. However, even before the enactment of this section, in 2009, MC had issued voluntary guidelines on CSR in the year 2009. And in 2011, the UN Human Rights Council adopted the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which was adopted by India. Accordingly, the MCA revised the guidelines issued in 2009 and issued the National Voluntary Guidelines in 2011, which were formalized as Section 135 in the Companies Act. So while Section 135 provides a comprehensive CSR framework for companies, and the primary responsibility to drive the CSR agenda has been cast on the CSR committee, who are required not only to formulate the CSR policy but also to recommend the activities or projects to the board for utilization of the CSR funds in line with the policy of the company. Section 135 also provides certain scenarios where constitution of the committee is not mandatory, which Dolly will be covering in her presentation. In which case, the entire responsibility of CSR committee, CSR, falls on the shoulders of the board. While it is widely accepted that Section 135 is the basic framework for CSR, there are a number of other regulations such as Section 166, which prescribes the duties of the directors, which states that the directors must act for the benefit of the members and in the best interest of all the stakeholders, and especially for the protection of the environment. There are also sections 181 and section 183 which have an element of CSR embedded in them, whereas section 181 talks of contribution to charitable funds and section 183 talks of contribution to National Defense Fund. Similarly, the listing regulations also provide that the board must act in the best interest of all the stakeholders. So here also the element of CSR is embedded even in the listing regulations. While on the topic of listing regulations, SEBI has also mandated that the listed companies have to report on compliance with the 9 principles of the NGRBC by way of the BRSR report, which is mandatorily required to be made part of the annual report. If you see the principles of these 9 principles, you can see that a lot of these principles have a reflection of CSR in them. Just to give a few examples, Principle 3 talks of well-being of the company's employees as well as the employees of the value chain partners. Principle 4 talks of respect of the interest of all the stakeholders, and companies should be responsive to the interest of all the stakeholders. Principle 5 again talks of the promotion of human rights, especially that the company should make the stakeholders aware of their human rights and take corrective action where human rights are affected. Principle 6 talks of respect, that the company should respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. And Principle 8 talks of promoting inclusive growth and equitable development. So if you can see, a lot of these principles have an element of CSR, and most of the activities which are prescribed in Schedule 7 of the Companies Act have all these, can correlate to all these principles. Therefore, the CSR committee finds itself in an enviable position where they have not only the responsibility to comply with the CSR requirements, but they also have an opportunity to create a positive social image of the company through their policies and programs and bring about a positive change in the lives of the people which have been affected by the company's operations. Since they have huge funds at their disposals, it puts them in a fiduciary position vis-a-vis the company and the society at large, since these funds are basically the funds meant for the society and the environment. With these opening remarks, I request Sudhakar sir to give his views on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Deepak. Thanks, Vala. Good morning, everyone. Several times I have mentioned one thing that CSR is not at all having any kind of complexities while implementing that. Fortunately or unfortunately, it is our own fraternity. We are making it complex by trying to bring charitable activities into the CSR activities. I said several times that charity and philanthropic activities are different to that of corporate social responsibility activities. What is the major difference between charity, same activities we are doing it because there are several charitable societies, organizations which are there, and several corporates are also doing the charitable activities, taking care of your health related issues, educational related issues, and other developmental issues. But charity and philanthropy is at the whims and fancies of the persons who are doing it. As and when they want to do it, they can do it. As and when they want to stop it, they can stop it. Whereas CSR is not like that. CSR is an institutionalized mechanism for the development of the not only of the areas where the CSR activities are being carried out, but nation as a whole. So CSR is basically discharging the obligations by the business communities towards the nation. That's what we can say. So as far as India is concerned, the concept of social responsibility is can be traced back to the ancient times. Because if you in our religious traditions, whichever the religion you talk about, every religion has a tradition of dan and seva, which is to help to shape the relationships between the privileged as well as deprived communities. But as I have mentioned that some people, whenever they do this charitable or philanthropic activities, they can put the restrictions that these activities, the benefit of these activities can be gained or can be what's called as okay, is provided only for a particular set of communities, particular set of religions. As far as CSR is concerned, it is not so. It is right across throughout the area, throughout the country as such. And it is also different from the, that whatever the activities which have been prescribed under Schedule 7, only those activities fall under the CSR activities and not. So when I mentioned that our own fraternity colleagues, we try to make it complicate because several times people call me and ask me that, can I put this into the CSR activity? It is very clearly it is there. It is a charitable activity or not a CSR activity. So unless until it is not there in Schedule 7, you cannot, even if you want to do it, even if it may be benefit to the society as such, but still it is not a CSR activity. Apart from that thing, we also have to take pride that India is the first and only country in the world to have statutorily mandate CSR. Inclusion of CSR in the Companies Act 2013 is a unique provision in the world. Several times the question has come that why CSR has been mandated to the private companies. But because private companies are very small in nature and they are not have they are only some family setup, why they have to do it? Whether it is a private company or a public company, closely held, widely held, listed, unlisted, it is immaterial. You are drawing the resources from the society. You are developing your businesses activities with the help of the society. So every business community has some kind of responsibility towards the society. And what is asked for 2% of your profits only have to spend towards the CSR activities. Can't you discharge this much responsibility? Let us have an introspection about that. So the corporates are primarily expected to conduct their businesses in a socially responsible and environmentally sustainable manner. In fact, Deepak has mentioned about the ESG, which is actually CSR is embedded in the ESG activities only. So when you do the business, by all means, business is always done for the sake of profits only. Nobody is asking you to earn the profits. But you have to earn the profits with a kind of responsibility without exploiting the customers or consumers. At the same point of time, you have to also discharge your social responsibility by spending just 2% of your profitable activities. I mean, whatever the profits you have earned. And corporates are expected to do the business beyond the normal business activities. That means whatever your products are there, you cannot donate those products. You cannot utilize that products for your CSR activities. Several times this question has come up, why can't I use my own products? Because if I buy someone's products and if I do it for my CSR activities, unnecessarily I have to spend more money. So the department's view as far as this is concerned, their experience is concerned that several companies, what they were doing is under the garb of CSR activities, they were pushing their rejected material, substandard quality material, slow moving stocks, non moving stocks, expired stocks, all these things. This is what is not expected for. So, what the department says is by that whenever you do the CSR activities, you have to do that CSR activity outside your business activities. Any activity which is furtherance to your business activity, it is not a CSR activity. So I give a pause here and request Bala to take further. And as and when I require, I will pitch it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sudhagar, for your wisdom of talking, especially between charity and as well as the CSR. To add to what you already said, charity, if I look at it actually by and large, it is a sort of a reactive and short term, giving a immediate relief. Suppose some flood happens, tsunami happens, etc., people immediately act because of the emotional feeling to give a immediate relief, get over the problem. That is where the donation by way of donating it, which comes as a charity. But whereas when you talk about the CSR, it is actually, as Sudhagar puts it very clearly, it is a sustainable and part of long-term sustainability, and rather than aiming to fixing the immediate problem, it is actually aiming to fix the problem once and for all for that from there. That is what it is. To give you an example, poverty. Okay, if somebody is hungry, we provide the immediate relief, that is the donation. But how to eradicate the poverty, that is where the CSR comes from, the long-term sustainability of fixing the problem itself. That is what the difference which actually comes to my mind. And another thing is that, as Sudhakar puts it very clearly, CSR has been in our country is the first mandated country which is recognized, which is given the legal sanctity for this. So obviously companies are legal bound duty to ensure this, especially the profit making company, as he rightly puts it, whether the private company or public company, private company, whatever it is, everybody is actually drawing the profit from the society on which they are bound to render it back to the society. That is what it means. I think I just thought of sharing my thoughts. I ask Dolly to take us through the presentations. Over to Dolly.
Yeah.
And friends, also, I would request you, as usual, please put up your queries and questions, etc., in the chat box. We'll be taking it as and when the relevant topics are there. We'll be addressing those things. Our experts will give an clarification on those doubts. And depending upon the time, at the end of the presentation is over, you will be permitted to raise your hands. We can also interact also. Yeah. Over to Dolly, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm grateful to hear you all the panelists and looking forward to more learnings. So I will just share my PPT.
Yeah, visible. But you have to put it in the presentation mode.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So as we know, today's topic is CSR Committee. So already Sudhakar sir and Deepak sir and also Bala sir has given the insights on the today's webinar. So today we will be starting with the concept of the CSR, how it got introduced in India with Companies Act 2013 and the Section 135 and CSR rules. Then what should be the constitution of the CSR committee? What are the roles and responsibilities? Along with this, we will also discuss upon the penalties and the case studies. So the CSR in India has started with the community engagement, then responsibility towards the society and the employee relations. But this all was involuntarily in nature. So company or the independent person, whenever they want to do some charity or donations, they were doing it independently at voluntarily level. And the Companies Act 2013 has introduced the concept of the CSR in India in forefront with this introduction of the Section 135. It's a legal responsibility that cast upon the corporate body to address the society and environmental issues being faced by the nation. So CSR is basically a board-driven process. So board will be empowered to plan, execute, and monitor the CSR activity based on it is recommended by the CSR committee. So as we just saw that Section 135 of the Companies Act is the section dedicated to corporate social responsibility, along with the company's CSR policy rules 2014. And Schedule 7 is about the list of activities which can be considered as a CSR activity. So there are various compliances when we talk about, CSR. So first of all, it's about to check on the applicability part, whether it is applicable to your company or not. For that, you need to do the net profit, turnover, and the net worth calculation. Out of three, if you are meeting any of the criteria, the CSR is applicable. Later part is about the constitution of the CSR committee, then draft a CSR policy, plan the CSR activity as per Schedule 7, disclose the CSR activity of during the year on the website, also report the same in the form CSR2 as well as in the annual report, and whatever the pending remaining amount unspent that company needs to transfer within the given timeline. And CFO or equivalent person also supposed to give the utilization certificate. Yeah, and there are again penalty clauses for the non-compliance. Yeah, here anyone would like to add on anything?
I would just like to add that while Section 135 provides the thresholds for compliance and for constitution of the CSR committee, if you see the company's amendment bill, which is proposed tabled in the parliament, it has drastically reduced these thresholds. So as and when this bill will become an act, the thresholds will be drastically reduced. Like say, for example, right now the turnover threshold is 1,000 crores. It is proposed to be reduced to 500 crores. Net worth is proposed to be reduced from 500 crores to 300 crores, and net profit is proposed to be reduced from 5 crores to 3 crores. So once all these things become law, the CSR as a law will cover a far more larger number of companies than it covers today. So this is my comment on this. Second thing is about the CSR committee. My take is that the law provides that the committee should have a minimum number of directors and one independent director. But my view on this is that bigger companies generally have a CSR team and a CSR head who separately heads the CSR of the company. So that CSR head should also be forming a permanent invitee. He cannot be made a member of the committee, but he should also be a permanent invitee to the meetings of the CSR committee.
And one more thing is there, as you touch upon the threshold. The threshold has to be checked every year, particularly the criteria is actually being met.
Yes.
So that is the thing. So every year the company has to check actually each year that they are actually required to contribute to the CSR. That is one thing. Second thing, even one of the year there is a loss is there actually because the concept of average 3 years that actually comes into play, because in the earlier 2 years if you have the adequate profit, in the third year if the negative profit is there in totality, if it is the positive, then also you are required to comply with it. It is not just because we have a loss we are not required to do. That will not be the case. That care has to be taken. Yeah.
Earlier, this provision, I guess, was that the non-applicability of Section 135 was when these criteria are not met for a continuous period of 3 years, which has been diluted a little bit with this provision.
Yes, so as of now, as per subsection 1 of Section 135, every company which are having their net worth of rupees 500 crore or more, or turnover or net profit meeting this threshold limits, then they have to check their immediately preceding financial years in case of the applicability. And if CSR is applicable, then they have to constitute the CSR committee. We will see later on the role of the CSR committee. Here, our focus would be on every company. So it is considering the private, public, foreign company also, as well as Section 8 company. The CSR Section 135 is applicable to all the types of companies. Moving onward, talking about the composition of
So,
CSR committee.
and only just a moment. So there might be a view that Section 8 companies as it is are not intended to make profit. But if you see the requirement of Section 8, it says that there is no restriction on a Section 8 company to make profit. The restriction is on how the Section 8 company utilizes its profit. While the general perception is that Section 8 is a non-profit company, it is not so. And all the requirements of CSR are also applicable to a Section 8 companies. There might be various Section 8 companies, like you have a BCCI, which is a Section 8 company which is making crores of profits. So even in such case, there might be other examples also where Section 8 companies have huge profits and they are also accordingly required to spend 2% of the net profits on CSR.
So talking about the CSR committee, the composition, it should be consisting of the 3 or more directors, out of which at least one director should be an independent director. There can be cases where company is not required to appoint the independent director. So in that case, CSR committee can be formed by 2 or more directors. Further, we will see a different type of companies where there is a company which is not a public company or a foreign company. In that case, if company is still not required to appoint the independent director, then company can continue without independent director, forming the CSR committee. In case of private company, if they are having only 2 directors on the board, then private company can continue with the that 2 directors forming the CSR committee. And in case of a foreign company, which shall comprise of at least 2 persons, and 1 person shall be specified in the respected section of 380, and another person shall be nominated by the foreign company. So this would be the composition of the CSR committee. While companies forming the CSR committee, they have to take care of this provision. Then again, there's a case of non-applicability of CSR committee. So in section 135, subsection 9 has given the leverage to the company to discontinue the CSR committee in case their CSR obligation is not exceeding the 50 lakh. So in that case, company is not required mandatorily to form the CSR committee. But in case company is having ongoing project, and let's say it's a 2nd year or 3rd year of the ongoing project, and to the company CSR committee formation, it's not mandatorily applicable, but company should continue with the CSR committee who will be taking care of the ongoing project.
Not only that, but dissolving the CSR committee when it is not applicable and reconstituting it again shows some kind of an instability in the approach of the companies. So the advice would be to have the CSR committee continue even if the liability is less than 50 lakh, or even if the company is not required to have a CSR committee. It is not meeting the thresholds. So the idea is that the company should contribute to the society's welfare and share the gains it has made at the expense of the society. So it is always advisable to have a CSR committee and carry out CSR programs, however small they might be, because it always creates a positive image of the company in the stakeholders' minds. Having CSR programs and ultimately it will benefit the company as a whole, because the image created by a company by carrying out the CSR activities will definitely help the company in the long run.
Yes, sir. And Sudhakar sir, would you like to add on? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'll just add on to only one thing that, as Deepak rightly mentioned, I also advocate that CSR committee, whether it is mandatory or not, it is always advisable to have that committee, because see, when we are doing our in the business, several times we constitute several non-statutory committees also, executive committees, we do it. What's the purpose of that? Because that particular committee is supposed to be focused upon that particular activity and to take some informative decisions. Same is the case with CSR also. Though the committee constitution might not be mandatory, but as far as CSR spending is mandatory for that company. So if there is a committee, that committee will take care of how that is to be done and all. Only one caution what I want to do is that whenever you constitute a committee, statutory committee on a voluntary basis, please ensure that all the compliances are to be ensured. I have constituted a CSR committee on a voluntary basis or an audit committee on a voluntary basis, and I will do on my own way. That will not be done. The moment you constitute a committee on a voluntary basis, you have to ensure the compliances of that particular committee as per the rule book.
My advice would be that the law prescribes minimum contribution. Even if law prescribes only 2% to be spent, there is no one stopping the companies from spending more than that. Generally, what happens is that this minimum is taken as the maximum, and companies generally tend to stop at 2% and not spend over and above that. Which looks like a half-hearted approach and a half-hearted it doesn't show the intent of the committee. I mean, if my liability is only 2%, I'll whatever the case may be, I'll stop at 2% and not do anything above that, which doesn't show the company in a good light. Of course, whatever has been spent is is good, but just stopping because I don't have a liability, I'll not do anything, doesn't show the company in good light. 1 year you do, 1 year you don't do. Is something which is not advisable.
Say one more thing further, what Deepak said, I would like to add it is that CSR, not necessarily everything you have to take on a very big ticket item.
Yeah.
So for example, your office is there, your factories are there. In and around, so much filth might be there. Filth, you can get it cleaned. Similarly, the roads are in shambles. You may be able to lay down the roads. Some permissions may be required from municipal authorities that you can take it always.
Correct.
Similarly, some kind of suppose eradication of hunger, there might be some chawls around your office. These are all nothing but CSR activities.
Yes, and these are continuous activities. Like most of the factories are located in the remote locations in villages where the roads may not be, especially, I mean, when you're talking of roads, the roads may not be of a good quality, and having good roads in the vicinity is always helpful, not only for the society, but also it will help the company in its operations. It is not just, and like you said about the hygiene and health. So as long as the society around you and remains healthy, I mean, most of your workforce will come from your society around you. So as long as it remains healthy, your operations will continue unabated. So that is also an added benefit for the operations of the company and the benefit of the company.
Yeah.
Sudhakar, as you rightly
again, one caution is that whenever you do this kind of laying down the roads and all, please don't do with a selfish motive. Because at one point of time, somebody asked me that they want to lay down a road from the railway station to their factory.
Yeah.
Because they know that they are getting the material from the goods and all those things, from the railway dockyard to the factory. So they want to lay down a road.
Correct.
I asked them, are you laying down the road into the villages also, inside the villages and other things? Answer is no. So that means what? You are actually doing a thing, you want to camouflage that particular activity as a CSR activity. Whenever you do that, that doesn't mean it is a CSR activity at all. Say, for example, you want to render some kind of health related activities. You want to put a eye camp or something like that and all. And you say that is what's called that services are available only to the particular what's called as in your dealers, your customers, maybe your employees. The moment you put any kind of restriction, that is not a CSR.
So, Sudhakar, actually, you well said this point, really speaking. I recall when the CSR was not mandatory, the company where I was working, we voluntarily opted for the CSR activities, and we actually set up a unit in the remote place from out of Pune. I think maybe Deepak will be knowing it. I am referring a place called the Saraswati, which is the remote place actually. So the roads were actually not good actually. The moment we realized the roads are not good, even the villagers were finding it difficult to walk through the roads, etc., and other things and all. We ourselves as formed an association, we talked to the like-minded people and we said we will actually get this road repaired for the benefit of everybody, not only for the industry but also for the villages. Then ultimately, as Sudhakar puts it very clearly, it was not an easy job. The moment we want to do the repairing of the road, first thing is permission was called from the regulators. We'll have to approve the town planning authority, we'll have to go to the people. When we gone to the people, they actually told you can put the road, there is no problem. But it should be according to the specification what is actually maintained by the regulator. That means, so much thickness, so much of this thing, all those things, and with all those things were there. Then ultimately we request, okay, no problem, we will actually go by what is required according to your specification, but we are interested in the good road. You can depute two of the people from your side to oversee the things what we are doing it. We have done that. We have actually put the good road, which will be in the longer benefit of the villagers and as well as for the industries people. That is what we have done actually. So one cautious, as he rightly said, whenever we do this sort of the activity, we'll have to liaise with the regulator. We'll have to probably comply with those regulations. That's what I think. So, yeah.
So once CSR is applicable, the next question comes about the CSR obligation calculation. So subsection 5 of section 135 speaks about the board of every company shall ensure that the company spends at least 2% of the average net profit of the last 3 immediately preceding financial years in pursuance of their CSR policy. So now this calculation should be made with the as per the section 198 format. And also company has to check last 3 financial years net, to calculate the net profit. In case where the companies has not completed 3 financial years since its incorporation, so it's a new company, in that case they have to consider the years of their existence. So let's say the company has just completed a year, then they have to consider that just 1 year of financials to calculate the CSR. And in case the company fails to spend the mandatory obligated amount of the CSR, then the board shall report in the specify the reasons for not spending the amount in the annual report as per the section 134.
Only one thing I would like to add here is that suppose you are obligated to spend the CSR money and you could not spend that money in your financial year. So as you rightly said, within 6 months, you have to transfer that money to a specified fund. But merely transferring that money is not sufficient. You have to also give the reason for not spending that money in your board's report.
Yes.
Both these compliances are to be ensured. Because recently, at one of my, don't know, somebody known to me, what they did was they transferred the money, but they have not specified the reasons for not spending that in the board's report. And ROC said that it is a non-compliance of section 135, and rightly so also according. Okay.
Right.
So please ensure that both the compliances are mandatory.
Yeah.
So this transferring the amount to a fund specified in Schedule 7 basically looks like a shortcut most companies take because they may not be having the resources or whatever you can say, the bandwidth to carry out the CSR activities. So transferring these funds, okay, we are not able to utilize them. We don't have any meaningful activity to carry on. So let us do the easiest thing possible, transfer to the PM Relief Fund or transfer to the PM Cares Fund and whatever. Here also one thing we need to take care is that the transfer to the funds which are should be to the funds which are specified in Schedule 7. So sometimes it is mistaken that the CM Relief Fund or something is also a valid utilization of CSR, which is not, because such kind of funds are not specified in Schedule 7, and only those funds which are specified in Schedule 7 are can be utilized for transfer of the CSR funds. So the idea should be, as Sudhakarji rightly said, first try to spend the funds, do some meaningful activities, and only if you're not able to do it in a particular area, then only you transfer the funds to any of the funds specified in Schedule 7. Otherwise, it looks like a mere optics that the company is doing something for the society, whereas overall, I mean, the outcome for the immediate society is not so visible.
Deepak, you rightly said actually. In fact, I remember in one of the cases as ROC has found out, there was the unspent amount of the money, everything has been done by them, the reasoning, etc. But the thing is, while transferring the money, they have not transferred the money to the specified account actually.
Yes.
What they have done, they have actually transferred one of the university who were actually on the educational activities. By mistake, they thought that is also a CSR transferable fund.
Correct.
They have transferred for the educational purposes to the particular university.
Correct.
But when the ROC has gone into detail, they found out this was not the specified account. The
Correct.
company has been told very clearly, although you are transferring, that is not amounting to the right transfer, you have to once again transfer the amount. And not only that, fine and penalties also they have to pay. So one
Yeah.
has to be very careful on that. Yeah.
Yes. So talking about the CSR obligation, now let's understand about the roles and responsibilities of the CSR committee. So as per subsection 2 of section 135, in the board report, there should be a disclosure for the composition of the CSR committee. Then as per subsection 3, the CSR committee shall formulate and recommend to the board the CSR policy, which shall indicate the activities to be undertaken by the companies in the areas or the subject specified in Schedule 7. Like they can invest in the healthcare sector or education or for any skills development, etc. Further, recommend the amount of expenditure to be incurred on the CSR activities every year, and also monitor the CSR policy from time to time, as well as CSR project.
So here also, while drafting this policy, I mean, this company secretary should plays a very important role, as Dolly might be having this in this presentation.
Yes.
So sometimes what happens is that personal experience, going by the personal experience, there are a lot of activities. There are people in the locations, in the plants, where the surrounding villages frequently approach the company and ask for certain things to be done for improvement in their villages or in the areas around the plants. So the CSR committee should not act in silos. The CSR committee should also take the views of the local management while drafting the action plan or the CSR policy, so that the maximum benefit can be given of the CSR funds to the areas in and around the factory or the whatever operations of the company are, so that those societies around that factory or operations get the maximum benefit. And you ultimately, what happens is that when the local areas or the people around you are benefited, you get the maximum cooperation from the people around you, and your activities. I mean, I'm not saying that if you don't spend those monies, people will not cooperate. But this creates a very good image of this company in the society, and people are always helpful whenever the requirement is there, or the operations require some kind of help or cooperation from the local areas. You will always get the cooperation from them very easily. So it is always advisable that whenever you draft any policies, the specific requirements of the communities around you should also be taken into account, so that targeted activities can be carried out for their benefit.
And also,
Like what we do, just to give you an example, like we have some plant. We are in the business of manufacturing sugar, and we depend on the sugarcane farmers for our the raw material. I mean, our raw material comes from the sugarcane farmers. So what we do is basically we tap the people around around our factories. We tap the farmers around our factories, and we don't go by whether that farmer is supplying cane to our company or not. It is generally we organize training camps for improvement of their yield, or pest control. I mean, non-hazardous methods of pest control. We fund. You can do a lot of things which generally will help. Ultimately, it will, when you help the community around you, you will ultimately be the beneficiary of that.
yes, definitely, sir. Just some time back, we spoken about the mere dispersal of the funds. So here the CSR committee and board are expected first to monitor the CSR project once they have given the funding to the NGO. Their role will be, ending when they are making sure the execution of the project is done within the decided timeline with the NGO, and also when they report the completion of the project in the website and also in the board report, right? So the CSR committee and board should ensure that the CSR fund should be dispersed to the implementing agencies as they have decided during their CSR committee and the board meetings. they have to give the funding in such a manner that they can be utilized by them during the financial year. Mere dispersal of the funds for implementation of a CSR project does not amount to spending unless the implementing agency utilize the whole amount during the decided time or the financial year. So again, Rule 5 talks about the roles of the CSR committee, or we can say the responsibilities as well. Sub-rule 2, the CSR committee shall formulate and recommend to the board an annual action plan. The annual action plan, it's for the how they are going to start with the CSR project, monitor and implement, and create a effective CSR project. So annual action plan consists of the list of the CSR project, how they are going to execute, so manner of execution, modalities of the utilization. Then later it comes on the monitoring and reporting mechanism and need of the impact assessment. So this all 5 points are very important when the company is drafting on their annual action plan. So board is also have the liberty, if they want during the any time of the financial year, they want to modify the annual action plan, or they want to modify the where they have given already funding for the CSR project, they can do that as per the recommendation of the CSR committee, and also they have to give the justifiable reason for that, for modifying their CSR project. Yeah. So
So, I mean, whenever you're modifying any action plan, see, ultimately the responsibility of the utilization of funds is with the CSR committee. So, whenever the board is modifying any plan of CSR plan, it should always be done on the recommendation of the CSR committee. Although, because ultimately, how the funds are being utilized and what projects are to be done is the responsibility of the committee, and that is why they are there. So my view is that the board should always take into consideration the recommendation of the CSR committee, and there should be a proper justification why a particular plan is proposed to be amended.
There is an interesting question has come actually for the unlisted company. How many times the committee should meet during the year? To be very frank with you, CSR committee has given a responsibility to monitor the activities which are undertaken, even if you are given to the NGOs. So in such a case, it is always better on a periodically, this maybe, at a time of a quarterly meeting,
Yes.
CSR actually should meet and take a stock of it to monitor the ongoing basis throughout the year.
Yes.
That is actually better. In fact, in the organization where I was working, I was also working in one of the unlisted company in one of the leading group. And we actually given to the donation to the CSR funding to implementing agencies. What we used to do is every quarter, we used to call the implementing agency themselves, make a presentation to the CSR committee, saying that what are the things, what they have done, what is the thing, any hurdle they are facing, any modification record, etc. and all the things. They used to monitor like that. It is actually as per the need of the company, they have to see what is the project, what is the monitoring is called for. It is better always, because in fact quarterly, every time we are having a meeting, it is better to have a meeting every quarter and take a stock of it. That is what my feeling is there. I would ask Deepak to share his thoughts.
Yeah. So I fully agree with you, Bala sir, and especially when the amounts are high and there are critical projects which you are funding out of the CSR funds, it is always better to have a quarterly review, or even more frequently, so that at the end of the year you are not faced with a situation that you have not utilized the funds and you need to transfer it to the government. So it is always better that the CSR committee meets as frequently as possible, but not lesser than quarterly whenever the company meets to adopt the accounts. So they can review. And what you rightly said is that whenever you are transferring the funds to an agency, it is always better that you call the representative of the agency and see and ask them to make a presentation on the projects, the ongoing status of the projects. Over and above that, my recommendation would be that since the company secretary is the person from the company, part of the management, he should always make it a point to visit, if possible, to the areas where these projects are being carried out or the funds are utilized, so that he can give a first-hand report to the CSR committee on the utilization of funds, and not just rely on the on the presentations made by the agency. As this is especially where you are transferring the funds to an outside agency. Wherever you are transferring the funds to your own implementing company, so that is a different thing because that is part of you. But whenever you are transferring funds to an implementing agency, it is always advisable that somebody from the management goes there and personally visits and sees what kind of activities are going on. And it is not just that there is an eyewash happening, that the implementing agency is presenting one thing and on the ground there is nothing. So there should be a correlation between the presentation made by the implementation agency and the actual status on ground. Like what we did, we have been as a company secretary of Sri Renuka Sugars. I have been to the various projects that we carried out. Like say we carried out school renovation projects in Gujarat, or we carried out farm improvement projects in Karnataka around our factories, and we personally visited. I personally visited the training camps which we had organized for the farmers, the hygiene, the health awareness campaigns which were organized for the women laborers. And that gives you a very good insight on what kind of activity is being done from the utilization of your funds. Not, rather than just relying somebody coming and making a presentation, it is always better that you have a first-hand report from your team.
Deepak, actually, you well said, because again, going back the organization where I was working, there were a lot of people who were within the organization. They wanted to also voluntarily do something towards this CSR activities.
Yes.
What we have done actually, we have actually talked to the implementing agencies. We actually identified the places where our people can actually voluntarily come and contribute, and they can spend the time and they can do things. We identified those areas. There are a lot of volunteer people. They went to the different places actually, virtually. They have seen, they spend the time, they come back. They also given the report to the CSR committee directly. This is one of the very good idea to understanding, rather than, relying upon what the person is saying. It is actually, seeing is believing. Yeah.
Seeing is believing. Yes.
Yeah.
So it gives a different kind of pleasure. Like when we visited the schools in Gujarat, these were all Gram Panchayat schools, schools in villages, small villages around our factory. So it gives you a different pleasure over and above your compliance obligations. It's a different kind of a pleasure that you get when you interact with those students. You see the improvement in the school infrastructure and the joy that the smile which appears on the face of the children or the teachers. I mean, the teachers and the teachers are the people who are the most happiest persons when you visit any school and you recognize their contributions to the society. So it gives you a different kind of a happiness, something which money or your achievements or success cannot give you. It's a different kind of happiness. Over and above, this is something which is over and above your regular roles and responsibilities, and which is that is the reason why CSR has come in the law. It's not just earning profits, it's how you spend those profits for the benefit of the society. And once you see that our money is being properly utilized, it gives a different kind of a satisfaction.
Fully agreed, Deepak. In fact, I personally experienced, I have volunteered and I have visited many schools, especially with the younger children. The interacting with those people and spending that time is almost, a separate pleasure in itself one can experience if they are involved. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving onwards towards the roles and responsibilities of the company secretary. So first,
Dali, I think we will take up the questions before you move that. I think there are a couple of questions are there. I think we'll just go through it. I'll run through from the beginning.
okay.
Would you be sharing the presentation with the participants? We have time again. I've been telling presentation is actually not being shared, but at the same time, the recorded webinar is actually disseminated. I think already the link is already put on this, which you can see, which will be available, which contains the PPT. You can watch it at any time. You can subscribe to the channel and you can watch this. That is something very clearly I said. Can I have the more clarity on the net worth and turnover means?
So net worth and turnover are basically as per the definitions given in the Companies Act. So you have to refer to those definitions in the Companies Act while calculating the net worth and the turnover.
Correct. Actually, you have to go by the annual financial statement, what is there, and you have to follow what is the methodology which is
Yes.
actually given. There is nothing is there.
Yes.
Okay. There is appreciation has come from Mr. Sudhakar. Somebody saying, Sudhakar Garu, your concise description of CSR in full and complete. There is a provision in the rule in which CFO of the company required to provide the utilization of the CSR fund. Can you give some light on that, and what is the format of such a certificate?
I don't think there is any specific kind of a format for that, but the utilization certificate should give a clear idea about how much funds you have allocated to a particular activity and how much funds you have actually spent. So while preparing this utilization certificate, the CFO has to be sure, and he has to be supported by all the concerned people in the management who are licensing with the CSR for the CSR activities, to provide all the necessary data to the CFO. And over and above that, the CFO should personally verify from the various documents that he has on hands. And as I said, it is always important that not just a documental verification, but also site visits and all those things have to be carried out, so that he is himself sure that the funds that are being spent on CSR are properly utilized, and whatever amounts that are presented to the board are accurate. So the role of the CFO is that way, just to cross-check whether the funds that are being given for the CSR projects are correctly utilized, and how much are being utilized, how much is left. So depending on his certification, the board will take a view on transfer of the excess funds, to set off the excess funds to the next years, or transfer to the unspent amounts to the unspent account, unspent bank account. So it is kind of a certification, internal certification from the management, depending on the records that are made available to him, and his physical verification that has to be made by the CFO. And there is no specific format prescribed by the law, as far as I am aware of it. But it should be like, if you are giving for 10 projects, each project-wise breakup should be presented to the board at the end of the year.
Can companies spend more?
Sir, just a second. CS Institute has issued the guidance notes on the CSR. So in that, the pro forma for the utilization certificate is given.
Yeah, so that can be used.
Yes.
Yeah, even I guess the CS Institute's guidance note also prescribes the model policy, CSR policy,
Yes.
which can be adopted by the company.
Yeah, in fact, time again, we have been actually talking, our institute has been bringing out an excellent guidance note on various topics. As Dali said very clearly, the CSR guidance note also very useful. Actually, one can actually go through it and make use of it. Can companies spend more than 2% of the mandated? Yes, he has already addressed this. He has actually explained this. Whether the CSR activities shall be undertaken within the municipal limit, or the company can anywhere in the country. Yeah, there is no restriction. You can undertake CSR activities anywhere, but the thing is, generally, the local preference is given by the company where they are actually operating. Over to Deepak, please.
Yeah, so there is no limit where you can utilize the CSR funds. As long as they are benefiting the society, you can utilize the funds anywhere. In fact, while I was with the Poonawalla Group, I have seen the CSR funds being utilized. The Poonawalla Group, the Cyrus Poonawalla Group, basically they have deployed, they are helping the municipal corporations, the Pune Municipal Corporation, and even in Mumbai, I can see, to clean the areas in the entire city. So they have deployed automatic vacuum cleaners which roam around all the areas. They collect the dust, they transfer it to the trucks, and that waste is deposited with the authorized waste collection centers of the respective municipal corporations. So I have seen companies doing that kind of activities, and which are very much beneficial for the society, which increases the cleanliness of the areas. So that can be done. I mean, there are companies building schools, there are companies providing amenities in the bus stands, railway stations. So there is no limitation on where to utilize the funds as long as you are utilizing it for a good purpose, which is prescribed in Schedule 7.
Absolutely, you're right. Actually, in fact, I remember with the company where I was working, it was having a corporate and main manufacturing unit at Sanaswadi,
Yeah.
and they have a branch at Pondicherry.
Okay.
But some of the people who are actually in Chennai, in the remote area, the outskirts of the Chennai area, they approach our Pondicherry unit for a particular school. They wanted to have the toilet facilities and other amenities, etc., is to be provided. They were actually requested. When the matter was actually put up, the company said, okay, it is for the children's education purposes. We will do it. The company has went all the way to Chennai and they have actually carried out this activity. There is nothing is prohibiting. It can be undertaken anywhere. But the thing is, generally, the local area in which it is actually preferred by the people, that is what my understanding is there.
My interpretation is why local area should be preferred is that you are using most of your resources from the local area.
Correct.
So if you return the resources, that if you give something in return for the resources that you are utilizing, your manpower comes from that, most of your raw material comes from there. So if you give back something to the local area, it will be of more benefit to the communities and they will appreciate the company more. Rather than you having an operation somewhere in Karnataka and you spending somewhere in Jammu and Kashmir, it is, I mean, what you say, it is compliance in letter, but whether or not it will be benefiting your, I mean, whether you will be replenishing the resources, that is something, a question.
Sir, if the 2% average net profit in the small company is actually negative, in such a case, the company can test every year till the amount to be spent come to the positive. If this understanding is correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. Every year you have to check it up, 3 years average profit. So long as the profit remains in the positive, yes, you have an obligation. The moment it turns into negative, then subject to other fulfilling the condition, then you don't have it. That you have to check every year. CSR activities can be taken. Yeah, that is right. A company has net profit more than 5 years in the financial year 2024 and is spent according. However, the company has a profit of 4 crores in the year 2024-25. Whether the company need to spend in the year 25-26, again the same question applies. 3 years average profit, whether it is positive or negative, that check is to be carried out. What is meant by the local area? In the village where the companies are registered office is located, district or state where the company is actually located.
There's no specific definition of a local area, but my take on that would be wherever your operations are being carried out, wherever your office is there, and from where you are utilizing your resources, you're getting your resources, would be the local area that the company should target for the CSR funds, because ultimately you are taking something from the society, the area around you, and you are required to do something for the people from whom you are taking those resources. So in my view, that should be defined as a local area. Of course, that would ultimately mean the proximity, the area in the proximity of your operations, but that is how it is. It would be very, as I said earlier, if your operations are somewhere in Karnataka or Maharashtra, or you are doing something out of in Jammu and Kashmir or Assam, it is good. I mean, I'm not denying that it is not something which is not advisable, but always give preference to your area where your operations are being carried out, because you are using the water, you are generating emissions, you are generating waste, which is ultimately affecting the area around your factory. So it is always good that you concentrate your activities on the areas around your operations. So ultimately, the communities around you are the least affected by your operations, and over and above that, they are benefited. You can give something in return to as a what you say as a as your contribution to what you say, whatever they have contributed for your operations, something in return for that. So that is local area will generally mean where your resources come from.
Can CSR fund or a part of it to be given to NASA, CISA, DISA to spread the legal awareness?
So CSR funds can be given only to those funds which are specified in Schedule 7. If they are not specified in Schedule 7, you cannot give that.
I need a clarification to the computation of the CSR obligation using the profit from the company, since the method of determining the profits as per the section 197 is different for the net profits differ. It is very, very clear, because if you are talking about the net profit of the company, it has to be always computed with a reference to section 198. The law
Yes.
itself says even for the CSR computation, it should be calculated under section 198, what
Yes.
is used for the managerial remuneration.
Yes. 197 talks of the managerial remuneration, and
Yeah,
198
197 talks about the managerial remuneration, 198 talks about the computation.
computation of profits.
He is talking about for computing the managerial remuneration under section 197. That is different from this. That's what he is referring it. But
Right.
the methodology is the same. It should be 198 is the computation, 197 is specifically utilized for the managerial remuneration.
Yes.
The CSR committee is also the same. For the unlisted companies, how many times CSR committee should meet this? We discussed actually. The net profit calculation, yes, I said there. If there is a change in the annual action plan during the year as to additional activity and the amount, whether it is need to be approved by the board or it can be proceeded with the mere approval of the CSR committee, especially when the board meeting is not scheduled.
See, the law requires that the annual action plan should be, if there are any changes in the annual action plan, as Dolly has presented earlier, this has to be approved by the board on the recommendation of the CSR committee. So any amendments to the annual action plan, see, the original annual action plan is also approved by the board. So on the recommendation of the CSR committee. So any changes, it is logical that it should be approved by the board. Whether or not there is a board meeting, there is no stopping. I mean, if you are not able to, if it's a very big board, if you are not able to convene a board meeting, you can always circulate the proposed changes to the board with the recommendations of the CSR committee and the justifications for changing the annual action plan, and always take an approval of the board by circulation. There is no one stopping you from that.
One thing is to be understood. The role of the CSR committee is only the recommending committee. It is not the
Yes.
approving committee.
Yes.
Because the question itself is actually put whether the CSR committee can approve. Committee cannot approve. Committee only can recommend.
Yes.
The approving authority is actually board. That has to be understood very clearly. So there is no question of CSR committee anything is approving. As you rightly said, Deepak rightly said, yes, if the board meeting is not possible, it is okay. Always there is a mechanism is available to you in cases of those things. With a circular resolution, you can always get it approved by via circular resolution. Does the expenditure on administration of the CSR committee form part of the CSR expenditure?
The law provides for administrative expenses, which was capped at 5%. I don't think the expenditure for the CSR committee, like calling for the board meeting of the committee and giving sitting fees to the CSR committee members, it doesn't form part of the CSR expenditure. Administrative expenses which are perceived by CSR section 135 and the rules are something different than what the expenses which are required to be done for conducting the meetings of the CSR committee. So it should not be confused, but there should not be any confusion between both of them. It should be treated separately and not forming part of the CSR expense.
There is a provision of the CSR rule in which the CFO is required to provide the certification. CSR fund can provide on the same. And there is any specific, I think we discussed this, any specific format. In fact, Dolly touched upon the
Guidance
institute
note
has brought out the guidance note, which actually suggests a pro forma format which is given that could be utilized. Is it possible to the company give the fund to an institution where the section 80G deduction available, and as per schedule 7, the CSR activity, the company can claim deduction of that fund too from the income tax purposes? For
CSR funds,
X
deduction
national
deduction from income taxes. See, CSR funds are basically something out of which are contributed after your profits. So, and as per the Income Tax Act, if you can correct me, I may be wrong, but deduction for CSR expenditure is not allowed as a CSR deduction. Expenses are not allowed for deductible.
One thing you have to understand, what is there, whether it is the expenditure, it is actually a distribution after the profit.
Yes.
So here very clearly, this from the profit, the distribution takes place. So when the distribution take place from the profit, this is a divisible from the profit, the question does not come. Income tax benefit comes only on the expenditure. Because this is not the expenditure. This is actually a distribution. You are contributing it after the profit from the net profit.
So this again claiming deduction from income tax for any expenditure that you have made for CSR again goes against the spirit of Section 135. Why are you contributing for CSR? You want to do something for the society. Now, if you want to do something for the society and again claim benefit, does it really make sense? And I think if you are contributing up for under the CSR, the Income Tax Act itself provides that it is not an allowable deduction under the Income Tax Act.
To my understanding, CSR activities are good, relevant for the country. However, I have actually some reservation about the allocation of the budget and the utilization of the funds. On a regular basis, allocating 2% of the net profit, a lot of money for the large companies whose profit after tax is more than 1,000 crores. You need to actually establish a separate, dedicated department to look into such CSR activities on the regular basis. It could be on additional burden to the company to continue the CSR activities on a sustainable basis. Additionally, funding such huge amount of the money could be actually issued to the company about the authority of the transaction, which established a burden of the company to monitor.
I don't feel that a company which is making 1,000 crores spending 2%, which is 20 crores, is a huge burden.
Whatever you
Only
say,
Not
whatever.
only for the big companies, even for anybody.
Yeah.
Suppose if a company is earning say 10 lakh rupees profit and 2% of that you have to spend.
It is
So
not a
that means what? 10,000 rupees. When you are earning a profit of 10 lakh rupees, can't you spend 2% of that? It is a mindset actually. It is a
It's a
mindset
mindset.
of the person. It is nothing but that thing. In fact,
Correct,
if
correct.
the company is spending the money, encouraging its employees also to participate in the CSR activities, I have seen some companies, in fact, even the employees started contributing to the CSR activities voluntarily. They say, okay, we will give the money to the company, let the company spend that thing. So it happens like that.
Can you please clarify that while calculating the section 198 profit for a 2% calculation, the previous year CSR expenditure has to be added again as section 198 does not specify anything on that?
I don't think it has to be added. I mean, you are ultimately defeating the entire provision of 135.
Correct, you're right. I agree with you. A company has given 1 crore for the implementing agency for the spending. However, the implementing agency has spent only 30 lakhs out of the said 1 crore. Whether the remaining amount required to be taken back from the
Yes.
implementing agency in the company, regular
Yes.
account on that amount is required to be transferred to separate account by the company thereafter, and the company is actually again to amount the to implementing agency, and the same has to be done for all the 3 years.
If you are transferring any funds to the implementing agency as part of an ongoing project, and if the targeted expenditure for a particular year is not utilized, then you have to take those funds back from the implementing agency and deposit in the unspent CSR account. If you are not utilizing these funds for a particular or a multi-year project, and if they are supposed to be spent in a particular year, then you have to transfer the funds to the any of the funds specified in Schedule 7. But then it is the liability of the company to transfer the funds and not the implementing agency. So my answer to this would be that you should take those monies back from the implementing agency and deposit in the CSR funds, unspent CSR account, or the funds specified by the Schedule 7, and not leave it to the implementing agency to that, because it's not the responsibility of the implementing agency to transfer those funds. It is the responsibility of the company to transfer those funds.
This brings another question actually. As we said, CSR committee should meet how many times, what are the things, etc. If we meet actually on the quarterly basis, you'll identify there is some issues there is a problem is faced by the implementing agency and etc. and other things and all. In such a case, as Deepak puts it very clearly, the unspent amount is definitely transferred. There is no problem. But at the same time, if you can identify the problem earlier, you can always change the implementing agency. You can get it implemented if the project is actually visible to be carried out. That is another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to take back the money, you have to transfer the money to the specified account. That is the only end.
And in case the project is not a multi-year project, it's as originally planned. If it is a project for a 1 year itself, which is the money is supposed to be spent within a year, but having a CSR committee meeting at the end of the year just to review the CSR activities would be helpful, because that would help the committee and the board to identify whether this particular project, which was supposed to end in that year, if it is going to continue in the next year, then you can very well, the CSR committee can very well recommend to the board that this single year project be converted into a multi-year project, and accordingly the funds are allocated. So I mean, that is again a benefit of the CSR committee meeting multiple times in a year.
What is the timeline of the
Just
impact assessment?
1 minute, Bala, 1 minute. Just to add further what you have discussed, Deepak, is that, as you rightly said, whenever the money is to be spent within one financial year and the implementing agency has not spent that, that is to be taken back and to be deposited in the specified funds. Sometimes it may so happen that the implementing agency is not in a position to give you back that money, or they have used the fund somewhere else and they are not giving back that money to you. Now, several times this question has come up by what is the company's company has discharged its responsibility. It has given the money to the implementing agency to spend the money. They have not done that. Please understand that implementing agency is not nothing but your extended arm. You are the principal and he is your agent. So it is always your responsibility only. Even if your implementing agency is not refunding that money to you, you have to deposit the money. And then, as far as recovery of the money is concerned, that is a civil dispute which you have to settle the scores with your implementing agency. As far as your liability is concerned, under the section 135, you have to deposit that money, irrespective of the fact that implementing agency has refunded or not. You have to deposit the money with the specified fund.
I mean, I have come across, because in one of our projects earlier, I have come across the implementing agency telling me that none of the companies asked us to refund the money. I mean, which is not the correct position in law, because the law is very clear that company has to deposit and not the implementing agency. As Sudhakar sir rightly said, it is just an agency. The name says it all. It is just an agency. It is your responsibility as a principal. Like in the case of share transfer agent, even though the RTA is doing all the activities, it is ultimately an agent, and it is the company's responsibility to ensure that the RTA is doing its job properly. And ultimately, the liability for RTA's performance falls upon the company. Likewise, in CSR, the agency's role is just as an agent. He's carrying out, because you don't have the expertise, he's carrying out those activities. Ultimately, it is you who is responsible, the company who is responsible for the utilization of the funds.
Not only that, the CSR committee has got the obligation to go the CSR report.
Yeah.
What happened to the project? What is the amount? What is the amount is spent? What is the unspent amount of the money? And again, if the unspent amount of the money, what is the reason? All those things which is coming as the disclosure. What is the timeline of the impact assessment of any particular project?
As per the rules, the impact assessment has to be carried out after completion of 1 year of the end of the project.
Yeah.
Timeline, I mean, I'm not aware. I mean, Sudhakar sir can add something to this.
Impact assessment timeline. What is the time limit for the impact assessment any particular project?
Impact assessment is to be done after completion of 1 year of the project. On the upper side, it is not mentioned. Sometimes it all depends upon the project. The impact may cause within 1 year, maybe within 3 years, within 5 years also. So, for example, this de-addiction, in fact, whenever you take the de-addiction programs, in fact, in Reliance, we have done that particular thing at one point of time. So there, the de-addiction impact, by the time the impact comes in the area where you are doing it, it will take 3 to 5 years time for complete eradication. So whether it is impact assessment has been done or not, if you do it in the 1 year, nothing is going to happen. It takes a minimum of 3 years. So after 3 years, we have conducted that impact assessment. So it all depends upon the project, what you are taking up. Say, for example, education or eradication of poverty, eradication of hunger. These all the things will take time. So whenever you take up a big project like this, then you have to give us some time before making the impact assessment. What statute says minimum 1 year gap should be there after completion of your project. It all depends upon you.
In loss-making balance sheet where the CSR is actually not mandated, our company want to spend the CSR for continuity, but banks objected for such CSR spending. What is the say bank people in my defense?
This is, this is the will of the company, I guess. I mean, unless there is anything in the agreement with the bank that the company will not spend on so and so things in case of a loss, I don't think there is anyone stopping you from spending the amounts even in case of a loss. As long as you are able to repay the your principal and interest repayment obligations, the bank should not have any kind of objection to your spending on CSR as long as their dues are being paid in time. And this is totally, something which is unfathomable.
See, sometimes it may so happen. Banks want to be very conservative when they are disbursing the funds. The company is not generating the enough profits or enough revenue, but they want to put the money for the CSR purpose for obvious reasons. So the banks may be within their right when we are disbursing the funds during that point of time. You cannot declare dividends. You cannot what's called as spend anything which is not mandated. So bank can object definitely, and they may put it as a part of their loan sanctioning conditions
Yeah,
also.
definitely.
One
So
of the covenants it may be.
it
One of the
can be
covenants.
part of the covenant. So as long if it
Yeah.
is not part of the covenants,
Then of course.
then of course the company is at liberty to spend the amounts. And
Correct.
as long as the bank, the dues to the bank are being paid in time.
Correct.
And otherwise you will attract other complications.
Yeah, actually, as you both of you said very correctly, so long as the bank's interests are not projectically hardened, because their repayment or principal amount, etc., this is not affected. They'll have to get satisfied.
Yeah.
If that is difference you have to actually take. Because when you
second-
are saying what
Yeah.
is the difference I should take, bank should be satisfied in whatever we are spending the money, irrespective of that, your interest is not going to be affected. That assurance which will be going to be given, they should satisfy. Then only it can be done.
Say
Otherwise,
that
it cannot
no,
be done.
sometimes it may so happen that you have paid my installment this month, my interest for this month. Next month interest you may be able to pay, you may not be able to pay unless until the bank got that confidence that you are able to generate and you are generating revenue and profits. Till such time they may not give you the permission. Say for example in 186 also, that whenever you are lending the money, you have suppose if you have borrowed money from financial institutions, you have to take their approval before you are giving any guarantees, lending any money or investing any money and all those things. So banks are very much genuine when they are putting this kind of a covenant. As you rightly said, it all depends upon the kind of understanding what you have with the banks. So this month installment I have paid to you, this month interest I have paid to you, I will use the money the way I want. No, as a banker, I may not agree because how about my future installments and interest? Unless until I got the confidence, I will not give you the approval. So banks always say that before you are doing any kind of things which is not mandatory, you have to seek my permission. I may give you permission, I may not give you permission.
Correct, absolutely, you're right. These all depend upon the cash liquidity of the company which is available. Yeah. Does the impact assessment needs to be done before the annual filing of the particular year, or it need to be reported in the annual return?
I think let that Dolly make further presentation because it's already 12:30. Why can't let her complete the presentation and then we will take up the remaining questions.
So, roles and responsibilities of the company secretary. First is about the governance and the compliance support. The company has the CS of the company has to track the CSR applicability first on year-on-year basis. They need to check the applicability, and accordingly, if CSR is applicable, they need to make sure the right calculation of the CSR obligation as per section 198. And also they have to inform and advise the board and the committee, CSR committee. Also ensure that the constitution of the CSR committee is in compliant with the section 135, and also to maintain the statutory records, it's minutes of the meeting and the registers, resolutions.
As
Then-
Sudhakar-ji, I would like to add here, as Sudhakar-ji has said in earlier, so this is a committee of the board, and all the requirements of convening the board meeting, conducting the board meeting, maintaining minutes, and even the secretarial standards requirements of a board meeting will apply to the functioning of this committee. So all these things have to be taken into account while conducting meetings of the CSR committee. It's not like any other committee, like even if you form an allotment committee or a finance committee of the board, so likewise all these requirements will come into picture.
Then CS has to assist in the CSR policy formulation. When board of directors are making the CSR policy, the CS has to make sure that the policy is in alignment with the Schedule 7. They also have to guide the committee on the drafting and updating the CSR policy, incorporate the annual action plan recommended by the CSR committee for the approval of the board. The CS has to also facilitate CSR committee meetings, drafting and the circulating agenda, notes, notice, and the minutes of the CSR committee meetings. They have to ensure that the quorum and the procedure requirements are met.
So in addition to that, as we discussed some times back, the purpose of these CSR committee meetings, the frequency, having these meetings to be held frequently, is that the CSR committee is updated on the progress of the projects that it has recommended to the board and the board has approved. So it is always worthwhile that the CS should coordinate with the respective people to have a project update status and a presentation to be ready to be made in the meeting. As Bala sir was mentioning last a few minutes back that he would always invite the representatives of the implementing agency to have a meeting with the CSR committee. So it is always advisable to, in addition to these, which are the basic requirements of the Companies Act, the specific requirements of the CSR committee and the purpose for which this meeting is conducted, that should be satisfied so that the committee is updated regularly on the progress of the CSR projects.
The another duty is to advise on the legal requirement. So the CS has to ensure that the compliance with mandatory transfers, that is towards the unspent CSR amount of the in the Schedule 7 or the Schedule 7.5 funds, or transfer it to the open the bank account and transfer it to the same, and make sure the proper utilization of it in the next coming year. Also, CS has to guide on the treatment of the excess spending, set of provision, impact assessment, and administrative overhead limits, interpret the CSR provisions correctly, and also guide the board of directors as well as committees on any amendments, MCA notifications, or any clarifications issued towards the CSR.
Here in this case of excess amount spent, these excess amounts can be set off against the liability for the next year, but most of the times there is a possibility that these amounts are reported as excess in the CSR1, but there is no supporting board resolution to set off these requirements. The law requires very specifically that the set off has to be with the approval of the board, and it is advisable that in the first board meeting, which is held after the end of the year, wherever the accounts are adopted, or when you come to know that we have spent in excess, it is always advisable to have an agenda in the board meeting as a standard template about set off of the excess amount spent.
And the last duty is towards the disclosure and the reporting of the CSR activity. So first is about to ensure the correct disclosures are given for the CSR activity in the board report, on the website. On the website, the company, the CS has to make sure that they are disclosing about the CSR policy, constitution of the CSR committee, and also about the projects approved. And talking about the impact assessment, if in case it is applicable, the CS has to make sure that impact assessment is rightly compiled and issued with the annual report, and also it is placed on the website. Again, it is not mandatory to place on the website for the impact assessment report. Then also to make sure there is a right disclosure of CSR is given under the BRSR report. Yeah, so these are the duties of the CS of the company to make sure the fully compliance of the Section 135 of Companies Act 2013. And now there are several responsibilities towards the CSR project implementation. First is about the selecting the right NGO. When we say selecting the right NGO, means that to make sure that NGO is compliant with the valid registration under 80J and 12A of the Income Tax Act, and also they have the CSR number. So the CS of the company has to make sure, or the CSR head, they have to make sure that they are choosing the right implementing partner. They can do the due diligence either internally or hiring any agency. They
I mean, this implementing agency is the law requires that they should have at least a 3-year track record of implementing the projects. Now, your company might want to do some project in healthcare, but this implementing agency has a track record, but it doesn't have a track record of doing projects in the healthcare activities. It might have a track record of doing water conservation activities. So, I don't feel personally that such kind of agencies are qualified to do any kind of projects for which they don't have that kind of a track record. You have, when you are looking at a track record, you have to always look at the track record in conjunction with what your objectives of CSR are. So if your objectives of CSR are to do something in healthcare, then you should select an implementing agency which is doing something in healthcare, and not any agency which is doing something which is totally different from what it is doing, from what you are expecting from the agency. So that care should be taken. And when you're looking at the track record, you should just don't go by the glossy presentations or their brochures. Actually see and talk to the people in those areas and find out the kind of work that they have done. There might be some kind of agencies which are very reputed in that area. So there you can trust with that, because you know that you have read about the activities. Like one activity that we did was to do some educational projects with the Maharogi Seva Samiti. If you know, it is formed by Dr. Baba Amte. So you know such kind of agencies where they are doing a lot of good work and they are known. But if you don't know the agency, it is always worthwhile to just visit those sites and look what kind of work they have done, and then select the agency rather than just going by their presentations.
Yes, yes. So just to summarize, the company has to make sure, from many parameters, that legally how the implementing partners are compliant. Also, whether they are having the expertise and bandwidth with them to do the successful implementation of the CSR project. And moving onward, CS has to coordinate with the implementing agency. Once they have given the funding, they have to monitor and track the utilization of the CSR money. And they have to make sure that it is in the same line towards the compliance of the Section 135 as well as rules. If impact assessment is applicable, then CS has to get it done, and also project evaluation and also field visit and the site visit is must. Talking about the documentation and record keeping, then the stakeholder communication. So this all are the duties of the CS towards the CSR project implementation.
I think here I would like to add one thing, that when you're transferring any funds to the implementing agency for a particular project, it would always be advisable that the implementing agency opens a separate account for the respective projects, so that tomorrow you can easily monitor the inflow and outflow from that fund, and any reconciliation also would be easier rather than just transferring it to the bank account of the implementing agency, a common pool. It would always be advisable to ask the implementing agency to open a bank account separately for this project, so that monitoring the utilization would be easier for the company.
And can I go ahead
Yeah.
in the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah. So the last part is about the penalty. As we know, subsection 7 of Section 135 has introduced the thefty penalty on the company as well as the all the KMPs, directors, CFO, and the CS of the companies. When there is a non-compliance of subsection 5, that is towards the provisions relating to undertaking the CSR expenditure, and subsection 6, so that is towards the transfer to unspent CSR account or Schedule 7 fund. So a defaulting company is liable for the lesser of the ₹1 crore or the twice the amount that should have been transferred to the unspent account or the Schedule 7 specified fund. And additionally, every officer of the company who is in default will be liable for the lesser of the rupees 2 lakh or the 1/10 of the amount that should have been transferred to the unspent account or the Schedule 7 fund. So this penalty section is just towards the non-compliance of subsection 5 and subsection 6. So when there is non-compliance of the rest of the subsection of section 135, in that case, the provisions of section 134 subsection 8 or general penalty of under subsection 450 will be applicable. Further, in case of non-payment of penalty within the stipulated period, the provisions of again another section will be applicable. 454 subsection 8 will be applicable. So now I've just covered two case studies, which is comes under the penalty under the section 450. So the first case is towards the non-constitution of a CSR committee. So Jainam Broking Limited changed to the public company from the private company on November 9th. 2021. On the same date, they were, the thresholding limit for the net profit met, and they were obliged to do the CSR, CSR and also form the CSR committee. Now, since they have converted into the private public company, they were obliged to appoint the independent director and create a CSR committee. So since this committee must include at least one independent director, the company also needed to appoint the independent director, and the company also has duly appointed independent director on 24th April 2023. And also the board has duly reconstituted the CSR committee on September 12, 2023. But still contravention has happened because for the period of 9th November 2021, from the day when CSR got applicable and the CSR committee was also applicable. So the contravention has happened for the period of 9th November 2021 to September 12, 2023, for which separate proceedings under section 454 of the Companies Act would be initiated. Later, the company acknowledged also their default, and on March 2025, it filed a suo motu application in Form GNL1 asking for adjudication of non-compliance of Section 135. The ROC reviewed the records and concluded that the company did indeed default for nearly 2 years' time. So although the company later corrected the default, the violation persisted throughout the default period and required penalties. So the company was obliged with the penalty was imposed for the company on 2 lakhs. And on 6 directors, 50,000 each, and on 1 director, 30,000 or 32,000. So this case was towards the non-compliance for the constitution of the CSR committee. So there is another case which is talking about the whenever the company is not spending the CSR obligation or CSR amount, company has to report in the board report. So this case is towards that. The Registrar of Companies in Karnataka has imposed and penalty of 8 lakh on the Ceratizit India Private Limited for failing to disclose the reason for not spending the CSR amount in the board report. The adjudication has significant implications for the compliance with the CSR regulations. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs appointed the adjudicating officer under Section 454 of the Companies Act 2013 to adjudicate the penalty. The case involves Ceratizit India Private Limited, a company incorporated in 1996 and registered under the jurisdiction of Registrar of Companies, Karnataka. The company failed to disclose the reasons for not spending the CSR amount in the board report as required under the second proviso of the Section 135(5) read with the Section 134(3)(o) of the Act during the financial year 17-18 and also 18-19. So the company has subsequently made the default for the 2 years for the amounting to rupees 13,19,849 and 14,47,982. So as per the second proviso of that is subsection 5 of Section 135, which state that if a company fails to spend the CSR obligation amount, then they have to report in the board with a justifiable reason, but companies has failed to do so. So in that case, company was imposed with a penalty of total 8 lakhs. So company has to pay 6 lakhs and 2 lakhs was imposed on the defaulting officers, that was managing director and also company secretary. So for both that years, they had to pay the penalty.
So this highlights what Sudhakar sir was saying earlier, that
Yeah.
even if you are transferring the amount to the any of the funds specified in Schedule 7 and not spending that, still it is the obligation of the company to make a disclosure in the board that why you are not spending your amount on any CSR activity and just plainly transferring the funds. Because the intention of the government is that you should not just take the easiest way out and transfer to the fund. You should do something constructively for the society, which is expected under Section 135. Secondly, I would like to state here one thing is that even before this amendment about the penalty came in the Section 135 in 2022, there was no such penalty for not spending the amount. It was a mere disclosure in the board report that, okay, you disclose why you are not spent that amount. And there were some companies who were taking a view that so since there is no provision in the act for non-compliance or for non-utilization of the CSR liability, mere disclosure would suffice, which was not the case. So in fact, when I had visited one of the ROC offices and having a discussion on this, he said this is a what you say a misconception in the minds of people that since there is no provision of penalty in the act, there is no penalty involved. So then the liability under Section 450 is automatically applicable, even if you uh, have a CSR liability and even if you make a disclosure in the board report, why you have not spent it. Either you have not spent it for any valid purpose or you have not transferred. Mere disclosure in the board report also is not sufficient compliance in that case.
In fact, as you rightly say, when the Act introduced in the year 2013,
Yeah.
what it appears that time, not spending is not the offense.
Yeah.
But why not spend? Not giving the reason is an offense.
Yes.
There were actually cases there because not spending is okay. That is not the offense. But the not giving the reason was an offense for which a company has been taken for a ride. Yeah.
But then, even not spending, even if after disclosing the reason for not spending in the, if you disclose it in the board report that you have not spent, you don't get away with that. Still, the penalty under Section 450 still becomes
Correct.
applicable because 450 is very clear about that.
In fact, see that this section was wrongly interpreted. The
Yeah.
intention of the ministry was always you are supposed to spend the money.
Yes.
In case of any difficulty, if you could not spend the money, you have to give the reason in the board's report. That's what they say. But what we have done, we have taken it as our birthright, not to spend the money and give some reason. Year after year, they are giving the same reason.
Yeah.
Then what happened was that the ministry got chased off. And in 2016-17, they started shooting letters to all the companies virtually. Okay, whether you have spent the money or not, if you have spent the money, how much you have spent, how much you are obligated to spend, and if you have not spent it, why you have not spent it. Like that, they have issued the letters. And if you see the 2019 Amendment Act, the ministry has virtually instituted criminal penal provisions for not spending the money. It was lead to arrest of directors. And ultimately, there was a big furor. Then what they did was, though the amendment bill, ultimately that amendment bill was passed and it has become an act, Companies Amendment Act 2019. Only thing is that particular provisions were to be come to enforce only after the gazetted this thing. And they have not gazetted that particular notification. Okay. Then in 2020 Amendment Act, considering the kind of error what has taken place, they withdrew that. And then they said that this kind of what's called, and if you have that Section 5 and 6 non-compliance will lead to that kind of severe, stringent penal provisions are will come. So only thing is that, in fact, this section, according to me, is a very simple section, very clean section. No complexities are there, unlike other sections like your 185, 186, 188, 42, 62, blah, 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 at all. This is a very simple section. And as I said that 2% of the profits to spend is not a big burden on the companies. Only thing is that it is a mindset of the organization. They don't want to spend that for whatever the reasons it is. And the company secretary is also bending their back to accommodate this thing. Because several times I get calls, sir, how to camouflage this? And I said, look, I don't want to talk about anything further. Just like, in section 90, people used to ask me that how to protect my promoter. Where is the question of protection? In section 90, they are asking you only the disclosure of beneficial ownership. Where is the question of protection? Same as the case with section 135 also. It is asking you hardly to spend 2% of the money. And that also, they have given so much liberty to you. Schedule 7 is full of activities. It is not only health, education, or other things, and there are full of activities are there. Even if you want to promote arts, culture, everything you can do it. Your religion, spiritual, so many things. And what they say is by that in Schedule 7 it is there. Over and above that, Ministry has also given a circular stating that you can interpret that Schedule 7 liberally. Okay, what else you want to do it? So it is a mindset of the company as well as the company secretary. Company secretary has to appreciate the provisions and he should be able to convince his management, whether you are in practice or you are in service. You have to say one thing very clearly. If you spend the money the way the government is expecting you to spend it, as Deepak, you have rightly said that it will enhance the image of the company, reputation of the company, and people who work for the company will take a pride in that getting associated. All your stakeholders will take a pride to get associated with a company like you. Say, for example, Tata's for donkeys years and for hundreds of years, they are actually doing the charitable work. That is not CSR, no doubt about it, but they are doing a charitable work. Because of the charitable work, the amount of respect what they get in the society is immense.
Yeah.
Though in 2016, that kind of a small rift which has taken place between Mr. Ratan Tata and the Cyrus Mistry, but still their governance image has not affected because of that image which they could build up over 100 plus years. So same is the case with other companies also. If you discharge your CSR responsibilities the way you are expected to discharge it, certainly the credibility, reputation, image of your company will get enhanced. People will take a pride to get associated with your company.
And moreover, when you are spending, just to add what Sudhakar has said, when you are spending in the areas around you from which you derive your resources, you might be extracting groundwater, you might be emitting, or you might be discharging effluents, which might be polluting their rivers, or so such kind of case, if you do take positive action to for the benefit of the society around your operations, they will also cooperate when the time comes for their cooperation, and they will not create unnecessary roadblocks or hindrances, because ultimately, I mean, if you are doing good for something, you will get good. That is what even our dharma says, Gita says.
So, sir, we can take up the questions now. The presentation is over.
Okay. If one of the board of directors is also a trustee in the implementing agency, what care must be taken in this context?
I feel it is a related party transaction. I don't know, but sufficient safeguards regarding related party transaction should be taken, because ultimately it is a transfer of resources from your company to that implementing agency. So in that, precautions in respect of the RPT compliances should be taken.
Please confirm whether the payment at the end of the year to an NGO is adequate compliance, while expenditure by NGO would be in the another year. I think this we discussed actually.
We discussed that.
This is not. Should CSR fund be utilized for any religious construction or any other expenditure if there is a utilize the CSR funds? I think just only Sudhakar talked about various purposes and other thing and all, but so long as it is in the schedule and you can go ahead.
So as long as it is falling within the schedule,
correct,
not for the benefit of your employees and the company as such, specifically, you can utilize the funds anywhere you want.
Before you take up, before you take up further question, there is one question always comes that companies say that they have pressure from political parties to utilize CSR funds and to do some activities which are not getting covered into Schedule 7. Though the politicians, they say, you got CSR funds, why not to spend that money? So they don't understand Schedule 7 and all those things. So under the pressure, if you buckle under the pressure and if you spend the money, if it is not covered under Schedule 7, it is not a CSR activity, but a charitable activity. Say, for example, Ganpati Pandals and all those things. You have to see that whether strictly it follows under Schedule 7. Similarly, do you have that kind of activities approved by your CSR committee and board? Otherwise, how can you do it? Some politician came and asked you something that doesn't mean that you will buckle under the pressure and you are compromising with the compliances. You cannot do that.
Just to add
What
to
are-
what Sudhakar sir said, apart from the political pressure that he was talking about, there are certain cases where certain permissions which are granted to an industry contain certain conditions that you should do this, do this, do this. You should build a well, you should do something for the school and all those things, which are part of the part of the conditions to the permissions granted.
Correct.
Now, this should not be construed as CSR expenditure because the CSR is very clear about this that any amount spent as part of your statutory liability should not be construed as CSR expenditure, and such kind of expenditure which you are required to do because of the conditions of the permissions granted is not counted as CSR liability.
I'll stop your presentation.
What are the
Yeah.
mandatory documents are required to form the vendor for carrying out the CSR activity?
For what?
What are the mandatory documents are required from the vendor for carrying out the CSR activity? I don't know. You should be approved CSR agency, no?
Yeah. So you should have CSR1, and along with that, you should also have the necessary approvals and I mean the permissions under section under the Income Tax Act. And over and above that, you might have all the documents, but do you have the track record for that? Do you have the capabilities? That is the main document that you need to have for an implementing agency.
If a company gives the CSR fund contribution to some XYZ organization which is registered under the Section 8, will it be treated as a direct or indirect contribution? Will XYZ organization become the implementing agency? Kindly explain what is the difference, the indirect ways of contribution in such a case of CSR.
In my personal view, there is no such concept of indirect contribution. When you are contributing to any agency for doing that project, that agency automatically becomes the implementing agency, provided it is fulfilling all the requirements of the implementing agency which are specified in the Companies Act. So I don't know what do you mean by an indirect contribution to for a CSR. Everything is direct. You're giving out funds to a third party, which is a direct contribution.
I think, sir, this is towards, so while we are preparing Form CSR2, there is an option to choose between that you are doing the implementation through direct mode or indirect mode. So I think the question is towards that.
Okay. So when you're doing it through an agency which you have incorporated, a company you have incorporated or a trust you have incorporated, then that is a directly, or you are doing it directly through the
For the
company without involving any third party. That is direct contribution. If you are doing it through a separate entity, that is indirect contribution.
It is observed during the last month of the financial year, the CSR fund is transferred to the implementing agency, knowing fully well that the fund cannot be utilized within the financial year. Further, it is actually noted that the implementing agency does not keep the fund a separate account of utilization certificate, and demanded by the implementing agency provides the utilization certificate because they keep on receiving the CSR fund from various companies, and which companies fund utilized is not identified.
So as we discussed, mere transfer of funds to an implementing agency is not compliance. The implementing agency should provide proof that it has utilized the funds. And when you are in the last year and you are transferring an amount with the knowledge and the surety that the implementing agency is not going to be able to utilize those funds in that last month, and ultimately the situation would be that you will have to transfer the funds to the either the unspent CSR account or to the funds specified in Schedule 7, you should not be transferring the funds with that knowledge. Because ultimately, as we discussed earlier, it is the responsibility of the company to comply with the requirements of transferring of funds to the unspent CSR account or to any of the funds specified in Schedule 7 and not the implementing agency. So once you transfer the funds to the implementing agency, it goes into their common pool and it would be difficult for you to recover that money back for transferring to the funds. And as Sudhakarji rightly said, it would again give rise to unnecessary complications of litigations in that case. So it would be advisable that if you know that you are not required to the agency is not able to utilize the funds, do not transfer it.
One more thing is there, as you rightly said. In fact, by association with the Vodafone group of company, we had several associate and group companies. So almost about 6 or 7 companies, they are actually regularly contributing to CSR on the ongoing basis. When we selected the common implementing agencies, we said to the implementing agency, we told him open a separate account in respect to each separate company and give a
Yes.
separate account for each of them. Don't club everything together.
Yes.
This is what it is called for, because again, the end of the year, the CSR committee has to give a report separately for each company, saying that what is the amount allocated, what is the amount spent, what is the ongoing, all those things they have to give. That is a must actually. It is on us to take care. Here really comes the role of the company secretary's role here
Yes.
comes into from the point of compliance and saying the things.
Yes. So that I think that should be made part of your CSR policy itself, that when you are donating the funds to an implementing agency, you should ensure that the implementing agency opens a separate account. And then there will not be any case for any argument between you and the implementing agency.
Similarly, it is observed that for the ongoing fund of the CSR funds received in the implementing agency are one go, and they do not keep the fund in a separate account, stating the obligation of the separate account on the ongoing project or non-implementing agency.
So as
No,
I
here-
said, yeah, yes, sir. You continue, sir.
No, here you have to actually educate the implementing agency and you have to make it very clearly what is required to be done, what is legally called for, because legal obligation with the company, not with the implementing agency. As
Correct.
Sudhakar also puts it earlier, the obligation is on the company's part, not on the implementing agency.
Correct. Correct. And that's why it is advisable that you ask the implementing agency to open a separate account in respect of the company's requirements.
Whether the transfer of funds suffice in the compliant applicability provision, this I think we discussed it, because it is not transfer, it is a spending. In our 3 years, there are profits of 2 years, but a loss in 1 year. How to calculate the spend, whether the loss can be ignored or only 2 years will be counted average of the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's a 3 years average profit. Whatever the loss is there, that can be subtracted. But so long as it is a positive figure, you have to arrive at it.
So, for example, if you have 1,000 crores profit in 1 year and the next 2 years you have a cumulative loss of 800 crores, still 200 crores is your net profit, and
Correct.
2% of that has to be spent.
For arriving the CSR profit after the CSR expenditure needs to be added back. This we discussed actually. It is not, it is only a divisible from the profit. It is not the expenditure. CSR expenditure amount calculated on the consolidated profit or standalone. Standalone.
Standalone.
It is not consolidated. Further, as you significantly mentioned, company cannot spend the money CSR in the local level, but will it be possible to collect a mandatory document like a CSR certificate, ROC from the local agency carrying out the local infrastructure development? What is that? Further, as you rightly said, a company can spend money at a local level, but will it be possible to collect mandatory document like a CSR certificate, ROC from the local agency carrying out the local infrastructure development?
So as long as that agency has the CSR1 certificate, which is supported by the necessary exemptions from the income tax department, you can transfer those funds to that agency. But just giving it, otherwise you can use that yourself in the local area. You can spend the amount. Say, for example, you are doing some road development work in your vicinity of your plants, which is for the benefit of the entire community. You hire a contractor because you don't have an expertise to build a road. You hire a contractor. For that contractor doesn't need to have a CSR1, because ultimately it is you who are doing that work and the contractor is just helping you to build the road. It is not an implementing agency. Implementing agency is something very different. Okay, so as long as if you're hiring an implementing agency, you should ensure that it has CSR1 and the necessary income tax clearances to carry out that project. Otherwise, you do it yourself. You can do it yourself. There is nothing, great in that. You can do it yourself.
Yeah, I think it
No,
is
you have
already
50, Bala, you have 51 more questions, so please make it fast here. It's already
Yeah.
105.
Yeah, that's what I also wanted to say. The
Yeah,
company
only
need to fulfill
important
the
questions,
CSR.
please pick up.
Yeah, the company need to fulfill the CSR in case of the even liquidation process too. Yes,
Yes.
even if the liquidation till the last day, all the compliances are actually called for.
Yes.
A fund given to the company to exercise or organize, example, filling of the school, will it become a project? Will it the transfer? This also we discuss. As long as it is within the Schedule 7, yes, it is okay. If the money is not spent, you'll have to call back.
But if it is as part of a statutory obligation, no.
Yeah.
Part of a condition of permission, no.
ATG deduction allowed, we talked about this earlier. In one of the year, company do the CSR. In the next year, due to the recent company revise the financial statements of the profit and loss and gain. Is it the extra amount spent on the CSR in the last year able to get exemption? Yes, you can have the setup, but subject to the board procedure is actually followed, board approval is taken care of it. General circular number so-and-so specifically say that the salaries paid to the companies and the regular CSR staff as well as the volunteers can be factored into the CSR project cost as part of the CSR expenditure.
So administrative expenses, so they are capped at 5%. So all that will come within that 5%.
Salaries paid by the companies to the staff, I don't think that will be the salary and purchases, which is by virtue of the contractual obligation between the company and the employee. If we are given
salary paid to the staff of the company, no.
If
there is a separate department which is taking care of the CSR and they are only specifically working for that, then yes. Otherwise, I don't think a salary of general staff is to be taken as a CSR expenditure.
Again, that should be within that limit permitted.
Yeah.
If we give the 1 crore implementing agency, if he has to mandatorily spend whole 1 crore of the year, how much implementing agency will survive financially? That is not. CSR funds used to be construct the building from the welfare charitable activities shall be carried and on other activities to earn future the objectives of the trust. CSR fund is used to construct a building from where the charitable activities shall be carried out and other activities to earn for future the objects of the trust.
Not a CSR activity.
It's not a CSR activity.
Yeah, some material given to the registered trust having the CSR on registration for the benefit of the differently abled children. Should this be treated as a direct CSR through implementing agency? What is the criteria of determine that the particular CSR spending is the direct or through the implementing agency?
We discussed this some time back.
Yeah, that is right. Whether it is covered under section 135, that's right. We said that. The recent decision of Mumbai ITAT deduction of the CSR expenditure contributed under section 80G is allowed for IT computation. Somebody is providing the information. If the company spend more than 2% in a year, can that extra amount can be carried? This also we discussed at last. For your knowing, it must be registered under 12A of the 80G. Yeah. If you are doing with the society or trust, whatever it is, registration is called for, you should be implementing agency duly registered. If CSR amount transferred the agency in which created the party involved, then to the another amount to RPT. Your CSR amount transferred to agency in which related party involved. Yeah, you discuss actually the related party transfer. Somebody raised this question.
Yes.
The real challenging is identification of the project which would go a long way to give results of the positive ways. I am aware of the company who actually spent some activities as CSR activities, but the results are not available to be very second years of the implementation. I think Sudhakar touched upon it. You're talking about the impact assessment.
Yeah. So not only the impact assessment, then it is a question on the utilization of the funds itself.
Suppose a company does not have any operational profit that particular year from any interest from the deposit which crossed the threshold limit. Does this make the difference with the CSR applicability?
You have to see the profits under 198 and the average net profits for the last 3 years.
Correct.
And decide
whether the baseline the survey required before initiating the CSR projects.
Advisable.
Whether any tendency or procedure to be followed to select the implementing agency under CSR. I think we discussed this actually. If the company plans to undertake maintenance of the road CSR activity, now it is hire the agency through the tender and give the maintenance work.
No, it is not an implementing agency. He's just a contractor.
If the NGO or Section 8 company registered with the MCA company can say it has directly undertake the project of the agency of the none of the other than. If you are doing it with the registering agency within the Schedule 7, yes, otherwise it is no. The company is not required to spend this year, but spends 2-year voluntary heads. Can it be claimed set off in the next year?
Pardon, sir? I didn't get the question.
If the company is not required to spend this year, but spends 2% voluntarily,
it can take a set off subject to board approval.
How long can the company keep the money unspent amount? Every year they can transfer the unspent amount, said account compliance is defeated, if I'm right. No, unspent amount you have to transfer within that 6 months period, I think so. That
Yeah.
is what you have to do it.
And in case of a project, you have to spend it within the project period. And if still at the end of the project period, the amount is not spent, transfer it to the fund.
What will be the consequences? The due related financial accounts or provisions and the public company falls under the purview of the CSR and 1 year time been elapsed.
I'm not sure about this.
What will be the consequences if due the restated financial account the previous year a public company falls under the purview of the CSR and 1 year time is elapsed?
If you are restating the accounts and if there is a profit there,
Profit,
that
yeah.
point in time you are supposed to spend the CSR.
Yeah. So the liability to spend will start when the profits are restated.
Correct.
Accounts are restated.
Correct. Yeah.
The CSR amount liability spent goes into the trust managed by the chairman itself. Does it print the sources RBT? Yes, we discussed this also.
Yes.
If we give 1 crore implementing agency, it is mandatory spend whole 1 crore CSR. That's also we discussed actually. Our company plant trees under the environmental clearance conditions under CR, corporate environment policy. Can maintenance of these trees can be
No.
recognized under CSR? No, it won't. Can CR expenditure included in the CSR expenditure? No, you have to go by the Schedule 7. That's
Yes.
what very clearly said. The ITAT Mumbai branch of the, in case of the Hemant Induction Limited, the August 25 and subsequently in the Millennium Developer case decided the donation made to eligible institution under Section 80G can be claimed on the deduction even if they are counted towards the fulfilling the CSR obligation provided they are not simultaneously claimed the business expenditure under Section 37. I think somebody is putting in information. Webinar was very useful. Other than the webinar chat, there is also a going tab. Okay, the CSR amount liability spent goes into the trust engaged by the. That's also we discussed. How long the excess fund can be carried?
That is as per 135. You can carry within that for the if it is for a project, multi-year project for the time frame of the project. If it is for a single year, then after 6 months you have to transfer.
Can the accumulated losses set off against the CSR obligation?
No.
No, how can it be? Because set off is only from the excess amount which is spent as the CSR.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion that all can see there's questions raised by the participants. A lot of duplicate questions can be avoided.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that is all. I think I had run through everything.
Yeah.
There is nothing is now left out. We are already 112, I think so. I also don't see anybody has risen the hand. I think.
I think there was one hand raised.
Yeah, there is one hand is there actually. I think Suryakant Patil. Suryakant, you are there? If you are there, you can unmute, you can talk. Yes, Suryakant, go ahead. Suryakant, you can unmute and talk.
I think he's not there.
I think it's not there. I think having answered all the questions, I would like to take the opportunity for thanking our panelists, also the participant. At this particular point of time, we can see at the close of the hours, we still have 133 participants who are actually there at 150.
Yeah.
That shows the importance of the topic.
And I really around 180 at the beginning.
Yeah, and really the session was very, very good, very educative. And Deepak sir, your excellent sharing, your input. I am very, very thankful to you.
Thank you, sir. It was my pleasure always to be with you on the same forum as Sudhakar sir and you are. Because as I said, we have always looked upon you and Sudhakar sir and Dr. Chandratre as our role models when we were growing up as company secretaries. And in fact, it was in Pune, you and Dr. Chandratre were our idols when it came to during our student phases.
Thanks a lot for your compliments. I think with this, we call it a day. We close the session. Wish you a good weekend for all of you. Dolly, my appreciation to you for bringing out a very lucid presentation and presenting it and educating, putting it everything nicely, added with the case law, which you actually brought out very relevant. You have done a wonderful job. My appreciation to you. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Under your all three guidance. So I'm grateful and thankful for all the learnings. I was listening patiently while Sir Deepak sir, Sudhakar sir, everyone was giving their inputs. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Dolly, for the efforts you have taken.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We meet in the next week again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.